good evening, and welcome to New News 9. The date is December 31st, 1989, and we have a special program for you tonight. We're covering the last decade in the shortest time possible so you can get back to work. My co-anchor here tonight will be Chris, and he's ready to start just as I am.
Hi, welcome to our show. First, we talk about what happened first in the decade, the potential 1980 Olympics boycott.
So Chris, what happened?
And I have notified the Olympic Committee that with Soviet invading forces in Afghanistan, neither the American people nor I will support sending an Olympic team to Moscow.
In 1979, Soviet troops invaded Afghanistan. We decided to create a plan to try and get the Soviet Union to withdraw. There were multiple threats of what we would do, one of them being the possible boycott of the 1980 Olympics. The Olympics were being held in Moscow, and about 80 countries were planning on competing. With the acts by the Soviets in Afghanistan, that number dropped to about 25. We needed to act, so we did, along with many other countries. So, when things began to get worse, 65 countries, including us, decided to threaten to boycott the 1980 Olympics.
Actually, the U.S. brought home 12 medals, 6 of them being gold. One of the medals is a great story to talk about for the United States. Chris, back to you.
1980 Olympics, February 22nd. It was the U.S. against the Soviet Union, and the Soviet Union was supposed to win. They had won their last 4 gold medals and should have won their 5th. The U.S. even lost to the Soviet Union 10-3 only a couple weeks earlier. Our hockey team was seeded 7th out of 14 and wasn't supposed to medal at all. In the first period, the game was tied 2-2, shocking all of the crowd because everyone was expecting a blowout. The second inning was the worst for the fans. They watched the Soviets knock in the only goal of the inning, making it seem like they had it in the bag. Then, in the third and final inning, Mark Johnson scored an easy goal to tie it up. The score is now 3-3, and we had hoped to go to the medal rounds. Then, in the final 10 minutes of the game, Mike Urizon put us ahead, and it is now 4-3. The USA team was able to hold off the Soviets' fight, and we won it, going to the medal round.
If I remember correctly, the team ended up singing the song God Bless America without even knowing the words. Now to the next topic in history. Our president, Ronald Reagan, and his policies. It's a story about a woman that changed gender roles forever.
Geraldine Ferraro changed the way we look at women forever by being the first woman vice president candidate. Let's take a look at a speech she gave previously this decade.
Before you to proclaim tonight, America is the land where dreams can come true for all of us.
The 1984 election was between Ronald Reagan and Walter Mondale. Mondale's running mate was Geraldine Ferraro, the first woman to ever run for vice president for a major political party. She and Mondale lost 524 to 13 electoral votes and had 17 million less votes. They were very unpopular from the start, and people liked Reagan a lot more. Let's take a look at an interview we had with Reagan previously in the decade.
Policy has decreased tension with the Soviets.
I believe that my policy has decreased tensions with the Soviet a lot. I think that we're close to tearing down the Berlin Wall, and the Cold War is going to come to an end.
How does the new lack of exports due to your policies affect global trade in our nation?
Global trade is affected greatly because they're not getting as much exports as before, but the American people are benefiting from it because they're getting American products from made in America.
Why do you think Congress only allowed 25% instead of 30?
30% is too much of a cut and wouldn't allow much for the budget, so 25% will help it a lot.
So do you think being shot in 81 changed the way the American people perceive you?
I think that the American people perceive me as being weaker from being shot, but I believe I'm stronger than ever, and our nation will get better. In recent years, the Reagan administration has been working on a program, the Strategic Defense Initiative, to stop the threat of the Soviet Union. This intense defense program is very complicated and can help against future attacks. Recent news just told us that the program has been scrapped. Now, over to you, Chris.
Now I am outside the White House, and it is clear that Reagan has decided to scrap SDI, the program. due to certain problems like budget issues with the government, tensions increasing with the Soviets, and the possible risk of going at war.
Now it's time to talk about a more distressing topic from our decade. When the Challenger space shuttle exploded with 7 people on it. Let's have a look at what happened on that fatal day. The Challenger space shuttle was going on its 6th mission on January 28, 1986. We were all confident that we would have success. We had a 7-person crew, and one of them was a teacher who had gotten a spot through the Teacher in Space program. The Challenger was set to launch on the 22nd of January, but due to weather conditions, they had a delay up to 6 days. The morning of the 28th was unusually cold, and engineers and scientists warned their supervisors of the possible outcomes, but none listened. The shuttle lifted off, and excitement went through everyone. Everyone was all up and cheering, only for 73 seconds, before the shuttle exploded. The shuttle burst into flames up in the sky, and hundreds on the ground, along with millions watching on TV, all witnessed.
Now, time for the brighter topic, the demolition of the Berlin Wall, and the rejoining of many families and loved ones. Dick, tell us about this.
In 1961, the night of August 12th, East German authorities began to block off the free passage from East and West Berlin with barbed wire. Only 2 days later, they began with a wall, also known as the Berlin Wall, to try and permanently block passage to and from East and West Germany. The East Germans continued to build along the border. They ended up completing the Berlin Wall and continued on to try and block off all of East Germany's border. The tensions would increase as the wall began to get stronger. The high rates of trying to cross over the wall largely decreased over time due to the addition of mines and watchguards with guns added. The tensions got so strong that Reagan ordered the Soviet Union to tear down the wall. On November 9, 1989, the Berlin Wall was beginning to be removed. Many families and loved ones were on the other side waiting for each other. The day was full of happiness and relief, and it was a big part of our decade.
Next in our decade, something still talked about by the public and the press, the Iran-Contra affair and our president's involvement.
Iranians had hostages of our nation. We didn't like that, and one of the people in that category who didn't like that was Ronald Reagan himself. We couldn't go to war, but then again, we needed to do whatever we can to free these people at all costs. The Reagan administration supplied weapons to Iran in exchange for the hostages held by Iran's leader. They gave the weapons to Israel, who gave the weapons to Iran, who will release the hostages held in Lebanon. At the time, it was a big deal, and the hostages would eventually get released. But in this case, the hostages were released in an unorthodox manner.
Let's start with the part that is the most controversial. A few months ago, I told the American people I did not trade arms for hostages. My heart and my best intentions still tell me that's true, but the facts and the evidence tell me it is not.
14 people were arrested after the fact. No one knew if Reagan was involved and wondered why he wouldn't tell the people if he was. If he was involved, he would have been impeached for lying under oath. During our decade, HIV and AIDS was a huge issue that plagued our nation. There was many fear and crisis around it, with its rise as deadly disease. By the 1980s, HIV was very rare in people. Before the 1980s, we had no idea how it was transported and what it was. We had no ways of telling if people had it and telling if you could get rid of it. Actually, we didn't have a guess on the amount of people with it. By 1981, it had already started to spread through our society. In 1981, 5 healthy gay men ended up not being so healthy.
Death didn't scare me. It was living with this for a long time. That's more frightening than death.
They're all diagnosed with a very rare type of disease that wasn't found in humans. Later on that year, 5 more gay men were diagnosed with a very rare type of cancer. By the end of that year, 1981, there was 270 rare unusual diseases found in people around the nation. 121 of them had passed away from them. Later that year, it was determined that the immune deficiency virus was transmitted through sexual intercourse. By the end of 1989, the amount affected in the nation reached 100,000, and the amount that passed away had reached an estimated 40,000 people. During our decade, we saw something that we thought we'd never see before. That is the rise of the computer. Over the past couple of years, it has proved very beneficial to our society, and will be beneficial in the future. Chris, tell us more about this.
Apple computers were created back in the late 70s, but they didn't come big until the early 80s. The Apple III came out in 1980, which was primarily a business computer and used in highly wealthy businesses. Later on in the decade, the Apple IIe released, which gave us the first computer without a numeric keypad by the side. Now, a huge release actually happened that same year, the Macintosh XL. It was our first computer to market with the initiative GUI, which cost about $10,000. The company ended up adding 7 more computers to their collection, making it their 10th in only 10 years. Some of the music you can maybe listen to it, depending on the computer, can be Call Me by Blondie, or by the very popular Rock With You by Michael Jackson.
So that was our decade, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed our special program tonight.
And I hope the next decade, the 90s, will bring just as much joy as the 80s.
Signing out from New News 9 Studio in New York, your hosts Dick and Chris, both wishing you a Happy New Year.